Coming up on Regarding Men, Cosby's free, and we like it.
Well, hello, one and all. I'm Paul Elam with paulelam.com, and this is Regarding Men, where we hold men in high regard and where red pill isolation comes to die. And there it went, up in flames like it belongs. I am joined, as always, by my wonderful friends and cohorts, Tom Golden from MenAreGood.com and Janice Fiamengo, the absolutely incomparable Janice Fiamengo from the Fiamengo Files. And we are here today talking about Bill Cosby, a man who raped 60 women, who went to prison, the evil bastard that he is.
Yeah.
And then he was let out on a technicality.
No.
Wounding women everywhere and ensuring that no women will ever report sexual assault again, all because of a little glitch in the system. And here he is walking free. And if you believe that narrative, you're consuming too much of mainstream media. I assure you, folks, Mr. Cosby, and I've done my homework on this, never did anything illegal except being in possession of drugs here and there. I guess if you go back to the 70s, probably 90% of society was illegal in that way in some form or fashion. But what this false story hinges on, one of the main points is, and you'll see it over and over again in the media, is he admitted to drugging women. 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 This is what he admitted to. He admitted to it. He said he did it. Well, guess what? It turns out in the deposition that was extracted from, and it was cherry-picked by the media, he was asked if he ever gave women drugs in anticipation of sex.
Yeah.
Well, duh.
Yeah.
We could, you know what? We can call a martini a drug in anticipation of sex. We can call all kinds of things drugs in anticipation of sex. And that is all he admitted to. He admitted to giving women drugs, not slipping them drugs, not slipping them a Mickey, not forcing them to take drugs, not giving them drugs unbeknownst to them. He handed them drugs that they wanted and had sex with them that they wanted. And that has been twisted into a criminal conviction. I mean, the craziness here was that he was ever convicted in the first place.
Yes.
And we can address this during the course of our discussion. There was all kinds of stuff in that trial that shouldn't have happened to begin with. The awful stuff of bringing in damning testimony from people that were unrelated to the case just to make him look more and more like a serial rapist.
Yeah.
And I've seen this on my Facebook page. I put up a couple of posts celebrating his release from prison because I believe it was a victory for due process. And even people in the red pill community are coming out. So, but he admitted to drugging women. Not in that way, he didn't. So I want to throw this. Can we stick up maybe the first article and go ahead and launch into our discussion here about this? He is released from prison after sex assault conviction is overturned. And the Epoch Times is probably the only place you're going to find some balanced reporting about this. I went through 10 or 15 different articles, and I couldn't find a single one except the Epoch Times that didn't mention it was a quote unquote technicality. Why don't we start with that? What was the technicality allegedly? And it was that he made a deal with a prosecutor that he would provide a deposition in a civil case and that he would never be prosecuted after that. Another prosecutor came in and said, oh, wow, this would be good for my career if I could put this guy in prison. And we'll just throw out that deal that was made, and of course that was eventually, well, yeah, the technicality, he got screwed, was the technicality. Uh, he got
Yeah.
screwed in the legal sense, and
Yes.
one fairly decent judge looked at this and said, "This is awful. This guy needs to be out of prison," and so that's what happened. So I'll throw it out there to you guys now. That's my 2 cents
And that was
on
just one of a number of different things that probably could have gotten thrown out on. But the judge chose that one, I think wisely so, because it would keep him from getting into too much controversy. But
Yeah.
here's what the judge said: when an unconditional charging decision is made publicly and with the intent to induce action and reliance by the defendant, and when the defendant does so to his detriment, and in some instances upon the advice of counsel, denying the defendant the benefit of that decision is an affront to fundamental fairness, particularly when it results in a criminal prosecution that was foregone for more than a decade.
Yeah.
In other
Yeah.
words, if you promise him he's going to be immune and you turn around and try him anyway, there's something wrong with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I found this whole thing so outrageous. You know, when it was going on, I did not know all of this background, but it is startling to. I read about half of the judgment. I must admit, it was so boring and repetitive that I kind of phased out about halfway through. But it made very clear that the district attorney of the county of Montgomery, I think it is, he made this very public statement that Cosby's case was closed. He would not be pursued on charges. We can get into why he made that determination in a little while, but and it was really interesting to me that he made that public declaration in consultation with the accuser's lawyers. Andrea Constant was the accuser, and he had a discussion. The district attorney had a discussion with her lawyers saying, look, she has a better chance of getting her pound of flesh out of Cosby. And it was a significant pound of flesh. It was $3 million
$3
in a
million.
civil suit settlement. She had a better chance, he felt, of getting her pound of flesh if she sued him civilly rather than criminally. And there were all sorts of reasons why he didn't think she made a very good witness for her on her own behalf. So, you know, this was a decision he made. It wasn't really to benefit Cosby. It was actually to corner him and to put him in a situation where, because he was not going to be criminally prosecuted, he could not evoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. So he had to testify in this civil suit. He had to give these various depositions. And then the depositions that he gave were indeed cherry-picked for his admission that he had given women drugs when they asked for them, or he had rather offered, in some cases, women drugs which they accepted. I mean, I just hate the lies that these mainstream journalists tell, this notion, that he drugged women and raped them, as if, exactly as you said, Paul, that unbeknownst to them, he was slipping these really powerful drugs into their drinks, you know, and when they thought they were just having a glass of iced tea, and then they found themselves incapacitated. It is it's just so dishonest and so misleading in helping general readers understand what went on in those encounters, or at least have some basis for forming our own opinions about it. So this is the way it happened, and this was a fundamental denial of his due process rights, and yet that is over and over again presented as a mere technicality. It's astounding, the misrepresentation in the reporting about it.
Yeah, the media tries to make it look like that he was like served with a warrant that wasn't issued properly, and that ended up in overturning the conviction, or there was maybe a prejudiced juror or something like that. No, this was the total evisceration of the deal he had made legitimately. And again, what they did in this trial, I think, was an offense to me. They paraded in right behind Gloria Allred, coming in like Gloria and her little ducklings, to line up women to tell the jury and judge what a bad person Bill Cosby was, that he had raped them too. Mind you, they had not a shred of forensic evidence. Mind
No.
you, that these were decades old uh, accusations that they, never found anybody to talk to about what had happened to them until Me Too came around and dollar signs started being put around this case of getting to Bill Cosby. So suddenly, I mean, like, what could go wrong with that? You've got, allegedly 60 women that came out of the woodwork from decades past, and suddenly they were all rape victims all at the same time. They all found their courage, and the media, the fuckers, are sitting around saying what brave women these are.
Yeah.
Brave women. These were skeezers that were attracted to celebrity and drugs 30, 40 years ago, and they saw an opportunity to cash in, and they took it. It's pretty obvious to me that's all that happened here.
Yeah.
And certainly in the case of Constant, the reason that the district attorney didn't think it was a very good criminal case was precisely because she was not a very good witness. She was somebody who had not gone to the police until the following year. She taped conversations between herself and Cosby that seemed to suggest she was trying to get money out of him, not to pursue a criminal case against him. She had returned on numerous occasions to his home, allegedly to discuss, her career aspirations. Right. When I wanted to discuss my career aspirations, I'm going to go to this superstar's home when I know that he is sexually interested in me. I'm going to go there on an evening and then pretend like I didn't know that there was something going on. And then I'm going to go back again, and then I'm going to go back again, and I'm going to maintain a very friendly relationship with him. I mean, it's so clear that this was one of the cases. I mean, the parallels to the Harvey Weinstein trial and the whole phenomenon around him are very striking too. These were cases where attractive younger women were interested in Cosby because he was a superstar, and also because he could help them. And they were, fully conscious participants in the kind of transaction that occurred. It certainly seems. And then, they never told anybody. They never went to the police. And years later, when they saw an opportunity for financial and personal gain from accusing him, they took the opportunity. It's striking that that's what the legal system has come to, that women can come forward who are not making a claim against the man on their own. There's no criminal charge against him, but they can still testify against him in a court of law. I mean, without their claims being investigated in any kind of rigorous manner. That's exactly, of course, what happened in the Weinstein case as well. So you have these cases where the claims will not stand up in court, or they've passed the statute of limitations, but they still get to smear him and contribute to his conviction. And everybody says, oh, well, they wouldn't. Of course, if 60 women say it, or if 5 women tell these stories, it must be true. Yeah, it must be true, right? They couldn't have just heard about the story and concocted something very similar, or tailored their own narrative to fit with the prevailing one that is, being spread around. They couldn't have talked together, as in the case of the Jian Ghomeshi trial in Canada, where it turned out that the 3 major complainants against him had all texted one another and talked together in order to get their stories straight, so that they could nail him. Anyway, yeah, it's startling to see this happening in the modern justice system.
And I have to quote Paul here. He said over and over again, men use power to get sex, and women use sex to get power. It's real clear. It's a deal that's been going on for thousands of years. And now they're taking it and monetizing it and making it work for them.
To me, one of the most important parts of this story is just the nonchalantness with which we treat the lack of due process. Like I said, I made a couple of posts about this story on my Facebook page, and I had a woman come in there and say, well, come on, men get convicted without forensic evidence all the time. Like she thought she was making a point
Yeah.
in there, and she was actually saying, what's wrong with the thing? And then she asked me, "Do you really think 60 women lied?" Well, I got news for you, Cupcake. It doesn't matter what I think about 60 women stories. What matters is what comes out of a courtroom after due process has been applied to a criminal case. And what came out of this when due process finally got applied was just one area. And Tom was right. There's several areas that could have tossed this case
Yeah.
out. And I think several areas you can toss out the Weinstein case too.
Yes.
It's fabricated garbage. Um, it's a shame to see this.
Yes.
Yeah, and to see the prosecutor making light of what they did to this man, and in a sort of bald-faced way, just saying, "Yeah, well, it was a procedural issue." Do you have that quote by the guy Tom, where he responds to the overturning of the conviction? And it's shocking, exactly as Paul said, to see the casual manner in which even people involved in the so-called justice system justify this miscarriage.
I think that's in the next one, the CNBC
Oh,
article
okay.
here.
That's right. It is. Yeah.
And I think this is the quote, Janice. Is that the one?
There it is. Yeah. Yeah. This is District Attorney Kevin Steele, who couldn't have cared less about the fact that an immunity deal had been made. Couldn't have cared less about the fact that he was involved in the fundamental perversion of due process. Oh, he says Cosby was found guilty by a jury. Oh, okay. Well, juries are never wrong, right? And now
Because
goes
trials
free.
are always fair.
Yeah, trials are always fair. Yeah, that's so that's the end of it. Now goes free on a procedural issue that is irrelevant to the facts of the crime. No, I'm sorry. That's I know these people are political actors, but still, it is gobsmacking to see the nonchalance with which they treat their own involvement in this miscarriage of justice. And then he goes on the typical feminist compliant talking points. My hope is that this decision will not dampen the reporting of sexual assaults by victims, et cetera, et cetera. And he talks about how nobody's above the law, but obviously he thought, and all of those who were involved in this case, including the judge who allowed those 5 witnesses to come forward to smear Cosby on the basis of no evidence at all. They also are not above the law. And they also should be worried about the public exposure of their misdeeds. But anyway, I don't know that they are worried about that. But this is
I wouldn't
for
hold my breath
Cosby.
on that one.
What's up, Paul?
I said I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for them to
No.
worry about any kind of accountability.
Right.
They'll be
No,
doing this. They'll be doing this to some other guy who's not rich and famous, who can't afford a bunch of lawyers.
Yeah.
They'll be doing this next week to somebody else who doesn't have the capacity to defend themselves, and they'll go home and sleep at night just fine. Oh, well, we got another notch in the belt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another bad
Yeah.
guy.
Another bad
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, we're making the streets safe
Yeah.
for women that want to have sex for drugs.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's
Crazy.
pretty amazing. Yeah. So let's go on and look at the next bits of text there.
The Rainn?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Wasn't there a statement by
the
Weinstein's legal team as well, which I thought was interesting.
Yes.
The Weinstein legal team got on this right away because, again, the parallels between the two cases are striking.
Yes.
Weinstein too was accused by women, years old allegations, women who had maintained very close and friendly relations with him after the alleged rapes. Cases where, there was certainly no forensic evidence, where they hadn't gone to the police or told anybody about what had allegedly happened to him, where clearly they were using him as much as he was using them, and where women were allowed to testify where there wasn't a case where there was a separate charge against him. They were simply brought in to supposedly corroborate the claims of the principal complainants. And Yeah, so there it is. Cosby's release prompted film producer Harvey Weinstein's legal team to issue a statement embracing the court's decision. And it goes on to say this decision also reaffirms our confidence that the appellate division in New York will reach the similarly correct decision in Harvey Weinstein's appeal, considering the abundance of issues that cry out for reversal. And yeah, that seems to be a case that similarly deserves to be reconsidered.
Yeah. Then there was a tag on to that one. Weinstein was sentenced to 23 years in prison in a rape and sexual assault case that ignited the Me Too movement in U.S. Weinstein's case mirrored Cosby's in many ways, with both cases relying on years-old accusations that lacked forensic evidence. In both cases, the judges allowed prosecutors to introduce allegations by other women who did not have separate charges against the defendants in order to establish a pattern of behavior.
Yeah.
This is just outrageous that this could even happen to begin with. I mean, yeah, sure, it might get overturned on appeal after, Cosby spent 2 years in prison unjustly. Weinstein is in prison unjustly.
Just thinking that. I mean, what took them so long to get this? It seems pretty simple. I mean, the whole thing with the agreement.
The of injustice turn slow.
They do.
Well, in this case, it was real freaking slow.
Yeah, it's really slow, and this is it's a triumph for Cosby, but my God, the toll on his health and on everything. I mean, he'll never get his life back. Obviously,
I really admire Cosby. I admire the hell out of him. You know what he did when he was in jail? He told them, "No way, I'm taking that sex offenders course from you. I'm not a sex offender." They said, "Well, you're not going to be eligible for parole." He said, "I don't care. I'll spend 10 years doing my sentence instead of lying to you about this. I didn't do anything wrong." You got to love the guy for that. What balls,
Bill Cosby's a hero.
Oh, man. He was willing to put his values out there. Like Paul's father says, if you leave your values at the door, you never had any values to begin with. Well, Cosby took his values with him. And he said, "Look, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie for you or for anybody else, or to get out of prison early. You take your get out of jail card free and shove it up your butt."
The temptation must have been overwhelming.
Oh yeah, can you imagine? He's 83 years old. He's probably he's probably going to die soon.
Exactly, it's the difference between 10 years and getting out after 3. At a time when you're living in probably, I hope not, but probably the last decade of his life. So he was looking at the difference between freedom and dying in prison. And yet he would not show a fake remorse.
Yes.
He would not confess. He would not take the course for sex offenders. I think that's really something.
This makes me believe him more and more.
They wanted that stuff bad. They wanted him in that program saying he was sorry, saying he was a rapist. They were desperate for that, and they were willing to say that we'll keep you in prison till you'll die.
Yes.
And he basically told them to screw off, which I think was awesome. There's another part of this that just needs to, I think, reiteration. In the 1970s, I did my share of drugs.
No.
Yes, I'm afraid I did, Tom. I know you find that shocking. One thing I almost always, for a few years there, had 1 or 2 grams of cocaine within reach. And I didn't even like cocaine. I didn't use cocaine. Didn't have anything to do with it. Why did I have cocaine? Because as long as I had cocaine, I had women. That was the society back then. And there's, again, an ugly truth here that nobody wants to talk about. When you've got money, power, celebrity, drugs, you got women lined up. You're not having to go out and say, "How am I ever going to meet women?" If you've got celebrity, drugs, that kind of power, affluence, you've got women lined up. There are women who will be mad at you if you don't come at them sexually.
Grab them by
that's the reality for guys in that situation. That's just as true now as it was in the 70s. And These women, obviously, Bill Cosby was a celebrity with money, drugs, power, opportunities, and they were playing to get what they could from the guy. And I'm not even saying I blame them for that. But to come back after that and say he raped me, man, I think every one of those women is a lot more deserving of being behind bars than he is.
And it's even worse than that. This woman won a civil case where she got $3 million, and then she goes ahead to push this criminal case. It's like, what kind of person has that sort of what would you call it? Oh,
A
God.
blood-sucking leech is
Yeah.
what I call it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But you gotta love Cosby. You gotta love him, man. Fat Albert and all. I'll never forget when I was a little guy, my parents used to take me to Cosby shows.
Sorry, I'm going to have to. Sorry, will you mute me just for a minute, Tom?
Let's mute Janice for just a minute.
Thank you.
I used to go to Cosby shows. My parents would take us to the Carter Barron down in D.C.
Would you close the
where
door,
Cosby was
please?
there. And did I mute her?
I'm still on.
Close your door?
Yeah, I'm still having the interview.
There we go. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Anyway, he was a funny guy. My whole family loved this guy. You know, when I was 10 years old, we used to go to these shows with Cosby. And I loved him, and I still love him, you know, for what he's done. He was a funny guy. He was just a genius as far as comedy goes. And now I see that he's got values, and he's holding to them, and he's truly a masculine fellow, you know.
Well, I got news for Anthony Dream Johnson. You need to hear this and hear it good, buddy. Bill Cosby is the new president of the manosphere.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Yeah, Janice, you're unmuted again, I think.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. I think maybe I'm sorry about all of that.
That's all right.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people coming to our house today to help us with various things. Maybe we should look at the last the statement by Rainn, which is the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network.
Yeah.
This is from the past. They filed an amicus brief to uphold the Cosby conviction on appeal, and I just thought it was really interesting that Rainn, feels the need to intervene in these kinds of cases and to uphold this. Really, it would be interesting. I don't know how long this practice has been a part of sexual assault cases, but it certainly does seem to be an astounding perversion of the basic principles of justice for the accused. When women can come in this way and make up stories or tell their story completely uninvestigated, uncorroborated, etc. And Rainn thinks that is a part of justice for, as they call them, survivors or victims. Can we see the statement in which they
let's see if we can find it.
They rebut the argument that the second trial of Cosby, the poor man, first of all, he was given immunity, then 10 years later, 12 years later, he was charged. And the first trial ended in a hung jury. And then in the second trial, the judge allowed these 5 women to come in and testify against him. So that the admission of testimony by 5 other women, Cosby's lawyers alleged, was unjust, improper. It violated Pennsylvania rules of evidence. And Rainn says Cosby is wrong. As the Rainn brief argues, Pennsylvania rules of evidence allow for the admission of prior bad actions where the manner and circumstances of the prior act and the charged offense are similar. Well, I'm not a lawyer by any means, and my knowledge in this area is woefully inadequate, but it would seem to me there's a huge difference. And please, anybody who's listening to this, tell me if I'm wrong, but there must be a huge difference between introducing testimony of prior bad acts when the prior bad acts have been affirmed in law, investigated and proven, between that and just having people come forward and say, oh yeah, he did the same thing to me. in a claim that is utterly uncorroborated. It is shocking to me
Yes.
that this,
Yes.
that any organization, even a feminist organization, can look on this idea unperturbed and think that this is the route to justice, to allow people to come forward and simply make any kind of claim at all in order to taint the character of the person who is on trial and facing a serious prison term. It's astounding.
I found myself thinking back to rape trials where it's illegal really to bring in stuff about her past history.
Yes.
You can't say anything about her past history.
Rape
But it's,
shield laws, exactly.
yeah, but here it's just fine and dandy to bring in 5 people to talk about his past history. What the hell's going on with that?
Yeah.
And this really contributes to the problem. One of the things I found in the handful of exchanges I had with very irate, hostile women on my Facebook page as I was celebrating his release, is a total indifference to any ideas of due process
Right.
or rules of evidence, and going on this emotional, but X number of women accused him, or
60.
he admitted to drugging women when, of course, he admitted to giving women drugs that they had agreed to take. But just the indifference to any kind of legal process or what, and you see this in Rainn's statement. They didn't really care about due process or getting real convictions, really addressing the problem of sexual assault, which you want to address with people who commit sexual assault.
Right.
And people who you can prove committed sexual assault. That's the way you do it. They're like, just give us, and gosh, if I didn't know better, I would say just give us any other black dude will do. We'll just go ahead and get some other women to say he did the same thing, and then we can throw him in prison for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
I'm just this is a disgusting story about how our courts have operated. It's also a very telling story about us as a society.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the gynocentrism that runs rampant.
Yeah.
Yep. Crazy gynocentrism.
Yeah, really.
And now, of course, we're going to have so many statements. I'm sure there already have been these statements about how the justice system has once again failed survivors.
It served
Right?
men.
It's the perfect feminist circle. When a man is convicted, it's evidence that there are all these, male
Terrible
exploiters
males.
out there, and a few of them have been brought to justice. When a man is acquitted, and even when there's evidence that he was railroaded, then that's just more evidence that there are all these male exploiters out there who are getting away with it.
Yeah.
The feminist narrative always comes to the same conclusion.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Crazy.
But meanwhile, we can celebrate the fact that due process ultimately worked in this case. It was slow and painful. I wish it had worked faster. I wish this guy in his 80s didn't have to get thrown into prison for 2 years to satisfy people that were treating this case politically, which is exactly what happened. But he did get out. Justice was ultimately served, and it would have been served much better if the women who made accusations, who were not good at testimony, which is another way of saying their stories didn't wash, they were not good witnesses, is another way to say they weren't credible, they weren't believable.
Right.
I think some action about that would be appropriate, but of course, that's not going to happen. If 23% of women can put their babies at risk of birth defects by smoking, and there's no accountability there. Accountability in this situation is just absolutely a pipe dream.
Yep.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Anyway, good news for Bill Cosby.
And we're happy he's out.
And I hope we'll see
good news
something
for me,
similar.
too.
You too, or me too?
The Me Too movement. This was great news for the Me Too movement. It shined a light on the movement and what it's about. And I think that sunlight's the best disinfectant. And we got a little disinfectant action on the Me Too movement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Okay, well, let's end then by saying, affirming that men
Are.
Good.
We're back to doing it right.
There we are.
Yeah,
Have a great week.
That's somewhat disappointing.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of boring.
Y'all take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.